What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Titletown South Florida, the Miami Herald's high school sports show. I'm Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor at the Herald, joined once again by former Miami Herald sports writer, still Miami Herald writer, David Wilson, back for some more. And David, that game, that Chaminade-Central game that we kept talking about, lived up to the hype. 31-28, the Lions prevail. Tremendous game by two tremendous programs, and I'm just glad it lived up to the hype because we hyped the crap out of it, and they didn't disappoint.
Yeah, I was a little bummed at first that I wasn't there, and then would you have a 2.5-hour rain delay or something like that?
Yeah.
I was pretty glad I was able to sit in bed and watch most of that game. But yeah, it was. I mean, it ended like right before midnight, and it was worth staying up for anyone who did.
Not fun when you're trying to keep from falling asleep on the keyboard at 2 a.m. as you're trying to write the game story of that.
And that was an eventful game story. It wasn't like you just had a couple things to write about. Yeah.
Well, people are going to see how eventful it was if they're watching this episode in a few minutes as we recap a lot of those big plays. But we welcome you back to this show. Remember, if you're watching it at MiamiHerald.com, you can also watch it on YouTube. It's available there. Let's go right to it. Travis Powell. The Lions came out strong immediately with that high-powered offense of theirs. Cedric Bailey, 4 touchdown passes in the game. Throws the first one to get them up 7-0. But we knew the Rockets were going to have to run the football. And Jaden Ford was the guy, not the only one, but the trigger man of that running game. Here he is slicing his way to the end zone to tie it up early. Early on, it was back and forth, as you can see, and then the passing game for Chaminade, of course, as Bailey hits Jeremiah Smith. Here's the first of their 2 touchdown connections. But Central would not go away. We talked about the combo of quarterbacks that they're going with this year. Antonio Smith got most of the snaps when it came to passing situations, but J.C. Evans worked a lot of goal line, a lot of inside the 10. Here he is scoring to tie it up at 14. So after Central took a 21-17 lead early in the second quarter, Bailey found Smith. And check this out. This was a sick one-handed grab by Smith. We've seen him make a lot of plays, but this one was probably one of the best. I mean, we could do a whole show, a whole highlight reel by the end of the season. I bet you we're going to have enough material to do that of Jeremiah Smith. Chaminade would add to the lead as Bailey's 4th TD pass. Here it is to Denarius Gray, one of the receivers that's a little under the radar when you have guys like Smith and Trader, but here was a nice catch. Now, the rest after that was up to Chaminade's defense. Central's cut into the lead 31-28 early in the third quarter, and they kept it there. Here's one of the key goal line stops. We're going to show you a series of plays here as Central kept knocking on the door with J.C. Evans, that same goal line package. Chaminade wasn't having it. Finally, after all those stops, it was Curtis John Vieira with the second of 2 interceptions he had on the night. I know he had one in the Heritage game, I believe.
Yeah, he's 3 in the last 2 weeks. Yep,
3 in the last 2 weeks. This kid has had a tremendous.
He was a pick 6 against Heritage too, so he's making plays everywhere.
Right. This was the first game they actually didn't have a pick 6, but again, another couple of interceptions to add to the tally for the team overall. And Chaminade now, firmly amongst those top 4 or 5 teams in the country. Mater Dei, Bishop Gorman, IMG. They're going to be right in that thick of it, battling down the stretch probably the season, assuming they don't have any kind of trip up at the end of the year. But let's hear from Curtis John Vieira about the game. How sweet was that to get that pick right at the end, seal it up?
It was big. It was a big time play. I know we needed that. Offense and defense were going back and forth. So that stop right there really put the game away.
The second half, when it became a defensive struggle, what did you guys kind of tell each other about making those big stops?
So we were telling each other we gotta get off the field because we stay on the field like the whole drive. Eventually they're gonna put up some points because we all getting tired. So we get off the field, often number of offense in the country.
Would you guys show the country today that we're watching on national TV?
We run Florida. We really do run Florida. And we come for national this year.
And what did you learn from these first 5 games? Tough opponents every week. What are you learning from it, and how much better are you
I'm really learning the game from playing these top 5 opponents compared to playing other teams. It's really slowing the game now. I'm understanding how the game goes.
Why do you just have a knack? Last week, every week seems like you're making a pick. So I just have a knack for it.
It's just me. I thank God. God really blessing me right now, so I'm gonna keep thinking it.
They run Florida, but do they run the country? I don't know. If they run the table, I think they've definitely got an argument now. What do you think?
Yeah, they're gonna have as good a case as anyone. This 5-game stretch at the beginning here. The schedule will get easier for them from here, basically, right? Until they'll probably play a good team in the state championship when they get there, and then we'll see. The state championships are a week earlier this year for everyone. Chaminade had been playing a week earlier. It sets them up to potentially play one more national level competition at the end of the year. So yeah, their resume is going to be as strong as anyone's.
Yeah, interesting. The announcement this past week that Chaminade's been used to this trip to Tallahassee for state, but now everyone's going to have to do that.
And the week right after
no bye week, right?
No bye week, yeah. Which most classifications had a bye week before that.
So yeah, gas up.
It opens the door for a lot of. That's the one positive of it is it opens the door for a lot of these teams to play in like bowl games or whatever. Central could potentially, which has not been able to play. Yeah. There could be a bunch of South Florida teams that are able to play one extra game because of it.
Yeah, potentially so. But yeah, they're making the longer trip up to Tallahassee for sure. And here's another team that hopes it'll be the one taking the ride up the tally this year if they can knock off Central down the road. And that's Norland. They're starting to look like one of the nation's elite, like they hope to be. They had no trouble destroying American 57-12 this week. Here's some of the versatility of this team. Juan Rodriguez, running back, jumping in on the fray here and getting a touchdown early. But as we know with the Vikings, it's all about, and on offense, it's all about Ennio Yapur, another guy who we could probably have a whole highlight package of by the end of the season. Had 3 touchdown passes and ran for another. Here's one of the touchdown passes to Ivory Akins. Now, a guy who can hit his receiver in stride the way he can like that, here's how dangerous he is on the ground. You can't even see him at the beginning of this play, and he just bursts through the line and scores. He just looks like one of the running backs running through there, and just the size and hard to bring down. And they are going to be hard to take down this year because this is one of the most physical Norland teams I've seen maybe ever, just in terms of size, what they have up front. They can finally match up to a team like a Central or any of these other elites. Yeah,
I haven't gotten to see them since the season started. I went out there in the spring and wrote about them in our preseason preview section, and that defensive line really stands out, right? They're that I know they've got some guys in the offensive line, but that defensive line between the Lumen twins who are going to Rutgers, Jermaine Carter, who was a first-team All-County defensive lineman for Carroll City, a little undersized guy, FIU commit, so a little undersized, but another one of the best guys in the region down here. Obviously Jeremiah Marcelin playing linebacker, kind of that edge rusher role. They've got, like you said, they kind of feel like at least at that position, they feel like a Central or a Chaminade or a St. Thomas, where it's just they can throw waves and waves of guys at you. And there's not a lot of drop off from the best guy on that line to, the first backup or whatever.
Yeah. It's really going to come down to, can they stop the run? Because if they can against Central, they're going to be able to put pressure on the quarterbacks and really make something happen. But that game coming up still a couple of weeks from now. And Norland has a bye week this week, but still also has a good matchup against Booker T. Washington before they face Central. So a big October on the way for the Vikings. In Broward, St. Thomas Aquinas keeps picking up momentum. We thought they were going to be challenged last week by Treasure Coast. They came in, with that ground game that has done it before. Not this time. They blanked Treasure Coast 35-0, an impressive victory, yet another one, despite some weather delays. And St. Thomas continues to roll now 4-1. Here's running back Justin Montgomery talking about the Raiders' latest win.
Justin was just talking to Coach. He's talking about the brotherhood you guys have as a team, and you saw it tonight with really spreading the wealth. A lot of guys doing a lot of contributions. You getting the TD, big 2-point conversion. Talk about that aspect of your program.
Yes, sir. First and foremost, I just like to say all glory to God, and all these boys that came out, they did their 111. And then the main thing is to get our brothers in that don't play. So you see that as the scoreboard, we got everybody in. That's the goal right there.
How did you guys stay kind of locked in? Not one, but 2 lightning delays. Kind of tested your kind of mental toughness. How'd you guys stay locked in?
That's just the will. Like them, just 1 and 2, man. Like them boys was quiet. Them boys. Some people talk, but for the most part, we was quiet. Them boys was still locked in. And as soon as we came outside, them boys was hyped. They was ready. We was ready to go.
Yeah. Talk about the overall performance. Obviously, you guys are getting better. You could see kind of your identity kind of showing. Is that what tonight was, a step in the right direction?
Definitely mid-season. We definitely showing our true colors and what we can do. And we still got a whole lot of talent that's haven't been shown yet.
Well, it looks like you guys are hitting it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That was Joe Frisaro on the interview with Justin Montgomery. Joe Frisaro, one of our writers. Thank you. We thank him for that footage. And David, let's go to another game that was, mired a little bit by weather and almost turned out to be a big upset. That the one you were at, Northwestern and Columbus down at Tropical Park. The game, it starts off with a little bit of a surprise. The Bulls kind of reeling coming off that Edison game. Didn't look like it. They come out strong. Calvin Russell gets this touchdown to put the Bulls ahead 7-3 early on. If you saw that flash in the background, which was a bad indicator that bad weather was on the way, and it was. A long delay actually helped Columbus. The Explorers come out of the break, get 21 unanswered, anchored by their defense. And this touchdown from James Madison commit Alberto Mendoza to Appalachian State commit Jose Leon got the Explorers ahead for good. After that, it was Edward Bandy with a couple of touchdowns to put the game away. A touchdown runs from the Bandy family of Explorers, that tradition, that legacy over there that continues to produce great players. Here's Bandy's second TD. So Columbus survives 24-7. David, any maybe bit of concern for Columbus after that close call?
Yeah, their offense, I mean, it's kind of been the story of their season, right? The offense is not quite clicking yet to the degree we saw last year when they could play a real shoot. I mean, they played an incredible shootout with Central last year, and but their defense is really good. And they've got enough guys on offense between obviously a championship quarterback and Alberto Mendoza, Jose Leon, you saw the touch. He just kind of makes plays like that. Benji Blackburn was really, really good for them. Boston College bound tight end. So they've got enough weapons there. Their defense is still really good. I think the first half was a lot about Calvin Russell was just kind of spectacular in that game. He started actually against Columbus last year when Tiger Dickens was hurt. And, he's electrifying. He's only a sophomore. A lot of people think he's a receiver at the next level, but I wish I had gotten a good video of it. I was cut off by I was standing on the Northwestern sideline. It was a run down that sideline, so I couldn't get it. But he had a touchdown run that got called back that was legitimately Lamar Jackson-esque, one of those back. There's the famous video of him when he was in high school and he stops at the 1 yard line and the guy flies by him. He pulled one of those. So he was a real problem for them. Once they kind of locked him down, in the second half of the game, and it flipped everything. I think we're going to be saying the same thing about Northwestern. Like every time we see them this year, it's like, man, they're just young. Like they got a lot of exciting young players led by Calvin Russell, but they're just young, and it doesn't feel like they can play a full 48 minutes yet. They can probably play 24 good ones against most anyone down here, but a full 48 against the elite of the elite down here, I think is going to be tough for them this year.
Yeah, and a tough one again this week. They go to Cardinal Newman, one of the better teams in the whole region there in Palm Beach. So to go on the road and put together, like you said, a full effort against them, we'll see if they can do it this time around and what they can build off of that, momentum off of that. Not a win, but a decent performance against a good Columbus team for Northwestern. But now we're going to talk about a team that has built up and become one of the breakout stories in South Florida this year, and that's the Coconut Creek Cougars, who are 4-1, facing their toughest challenger yet this week against Chaminade, but already big wins against Plantation, Western, coming off a huge one where they dominated Blanche Ely and broke that 13-game winning streak of the Tigers. We visited with Coach Johnnie Sloan to talk a little bit about how this Creek team has been built and why they're succeeding. All right, we're here with Coconut Creek coach Johnnie Sloan. Thanks for joining us on Titletown South Florida, Coach. We've been talking a lot about your Cougars the last few weeks here, as you've been racking up some pretty good wins against some pretty good competition in Broward County. But first off, welcome to the show, Coach, and thanks for joining us. And just tell us a little bit about just everything that's gone into this and putting Coconut Creek to the point that it's at right now.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate you, taking your time out to talk with me today. But no, it's just a lot of the boys that we had, that are seniors now, we had since 9th grade, 10th grade playing. And I just like over the years, being dedicated and loyal to our team and just being able to, play hard, aggressive, but doing everything the right way. Not trying to go out and get kids from other places, just the kids we got in, we love on them. We treat them like they ours, and they feel it. So in return, they'll run through a wall for us. So I think, with my coaching style, being together for a while and just working together and loving on our kids, and I think it's finally starting to show dividends.
Coach, this program, you've had success before. I mean, the Mullins were there a few years ago. But the depth that you've been able to build, just talk a little bit about that. And also, just when did you start to see the buy-in that you were talking about just now from the kids? Like at what point did you really see it start to click where you felt we could have something special here?
I think when I first took over 4 years ago, creating our own 7-on-7, I think that was that first turning point, as opposed to letting them go out and play for all other teams. That everybody that played 7-on-7, that was a part of my team, had to play for my team. That started there, and then doing our college tours, just bonding. We took 35 on a college tour each year. So being able to, go across the country and be together for 9 straight days, that kind of built some stuff. And just working and being together, like a lot of our free time, we still with the kids. So it's just, we're always together. And I told them we won't be a team until they love each other like brothers. And now you see that. If you see one of them, you're going to see 10 of them. Mm-hmm. So they actually love each other. And it's not just a football thing. It's a life thing. So I think that's the difference.
How many in that time frame, how many kids have you already had sign and go play college football?
So, well, I can't even count now, but last year we had 17 seniors. 16 of them signed scholarships. The one that didn't sign, it's just because he just chose not to play football anymore, and that's cool. But we still find him a way to go to school and still love on him regardless of that choice. But our goal is to get all of them in the school, give them the opportunity. So, that's what we're about, getting our boys in the school.
Yeah, that's definitely, the good part of it for sure. Who are some of those guys on this team right now that, maybe have either committed or even if they haven't yet that schools are looking at right now, some of the top ones?
Well, Elijah Cannon, he committed to FAU. That's my corner. My other corner, Haja Miller. He committed to Toledo. My linebacker, Jermaine Wilson, committed to Georgia State. But it's a lot more. Godson, Sanillian, he hasn't committed yet, but has a lot of, looks. Samaj Wallace, Eric Simmons. I can go all the way down the line. Like, I got a lot of them that's, I think big time is just, coaches coming in to see him and talk to him is just making the right decision and the right fit for him. And that's what it's about. And I know we have a lot of connections with a lot of college coaches, and I talk to them all the time. But when I send my kids off, I want them to be comfortable. I want them to be in a place where, it's home. And I talk to all my boys now that's going off to school, even from last year, that call me shoot weekly. And, it's going to get hard. And I tell them, you got to call me when it get hard, and we'll talk through it. So that's what it's about. That they go to college, but they finish. You know what I mean? A lot of boys go off to school and they just back home the next semester. Like, I need them to go and finish and get the paper and bring it back and do something different, change generations. So that's what we're about.
Coach, who instilled that in you? Like, where did you kind of learn that? Was there a coach that maybe you learned that from to take that level of care for your kids beyond the field?
I don't know. I guess over the years, I think a lot of people done poured into my life. So I don't take it for granted the relationships I had along the way. But my father's been in my life my whole life, and growing up with a mother and father in a household was different, especially in my neighborhood, because I was probably the only one that had a mom and daddy in the house. So, just having a strong foundation, I think, is important. And I got a lot of great coaches on my staff that's, we teach the same thing, Chris Jurgens and Thomas McLeod. And, like, I have great coaches that's around me that really pour into kids, and we were about the same thing. So it's no egos. I'm not trying to go nowhere in my coaching staff. Like, my aspirations is not the coaching in college. And you know what I mean? I have 5 kids of my own. So I think my work is where it need to be.
The word culture gets thrown around so easy these days, but like, how satisfying is it that you've seen something built like that, like what you're talking about at this school, that looks like it can last no matter what the record?
Yeah, well, that's the point, and that's what I wanted to create. And I think a lot of times, as much as we love winning and as much as we put our all into this coaching and the X's and O's, is way more important than our boys are successful in life. So it goes beyond the field, and I think when we put for me, putting out my Lord and Savior first and instilling the things that build good men, is better than what we can build on the field. But I think it all plays a part in just developing youth in general. So I want to build them from the ground up. And, we have something we call Keep It Real Mondays, right? So we just allow our kids to express things that they're dealing with in the open between us and our coaches, that we just allow them to talk about, whether it's girls, whether it's life situation, whatever it is, that they're able to open up. And a lot of times with young men, we don't get an opportunity to talk, or we tell them to hide their feelings, or they can't cry. And I think when we give our young kids a voice, it makes a difference, because they know they heard it, and we're able to, continue to just pour into them and let them know that, we go through these same things. A lot of times, if we don't hear it from somebody else, we feel like we're doing it alone. So I want them to always be able to know that we go through these same things and we got somebody to talk to.
Coach, you have your team's picked up a lot of good wins this year. Western, Plantation, a bunch of teams that with some traditions. Now you have another big test coming this weekend with Chaminade. With games like this, win or lose, how much does that help? How much do you take from each win how much of the kids just continue to develop and get even better just because of the experiences of playing these types of teams.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think that's why we scheduled, this was a asterisk. Gainesville was an asterisk. But I put them in a mind frame that is no big games, right? We're going to prepare the same regardless. We still watching film. We still doing, like, it doesn't change our preparation. And I tell them that we always got to stay at 78 degrees, right? Because they say that's the most comfortable temperature. That no matter what happens, we stay in that middle, like good or bad. Like, we got to be able to maintain focus. So I can't get too high because it's Chaminade, but I can't get too low because it's whoever. You know what I mean? So I'm going to approach it every way, and that's why we always got to play to our standards. So if we play to our standards, it really don't matter who line up. We just got to play. So that's our focus, and that's what we on. I just got to, the media, the social media, the students, the parents, the outside community going to build it up, real high. But we got to, we just do our thing. We're back to fundamentals and playing ball. So, that's my focus this week, just making sure our fundamentals are on point.
Coach Johnnie Sloan, Coconut Creek High. You can catch them this weekend taking on Chaminade as the Cougars continue to strive for big things this season. Look like one of the teams to watch for sure in 2023 and beyond. But Coach, thanks again for joining us on Titletown South Florida, and we wish you guys the best over there. Keep doing what you're doing, on and off the field. Sounds like great stuff happening at Coconut Creek.
All right, man. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, we thank Coach Sloan for being a guest on the show, and we'll see how Creek does down the stretch. Obviously, they're in Class 3M. It's going to be tough with St. Thomas in that region, but this will be a good indicator, like we said before, against Chaminade to see how they stack up against one of the best in the country. And now we're going to bring in another guest on this show, and that was our good pal Larry Blustein, regular guest on this show. We're almost at the midway point of the season, so we wanted to get Larry's thoughts on what stood out to him throughout the first half, not just among the upper tier, but a lot of surprise teams like Creek. Here's what Larry had to say. All right, we're here with our buddy Larry Blustein, who a friend of the show, and always a pleasure to have you on this program, Larry. We're at mid-season, so I figured let me invite you on, and we've been to a lot of games. We've been on a lot of sidelines together like we normally have. Wanted to get your thoughts kind of on the season so far through the first 5 weeks. I guess, we just talked a lot about that big game that lived up to the billing between Chaminade and Central. No surprise with those two programs that go down to the wire the way they did. Larry, what do you think Chaminade gets through this 5-game gauntlet? Obviously not done facing teams with a pulse yet. They've got a few more good ones on the schedule. But big picture, has this team played its way to a point where they should be considered for the national title, no matter who's in those rankings?
Well, certainly. I mean, with the schedule they played. Yeah, no doubt. But a couple of things have to happen in front. Obviously, Bishop Gorman has to lose and Mater Dei has to lose, and they have to win out. I think they'll be favored in every game. I think that they got a unexpected test this week against Coconut Creek, because Coconut Creek, and while they don't have anywhere near the skill kids that Chaminade has, they match up extremely well on the line. I don't think anybody realizes. And I was just talking to somebody who was at the game last week against Ely and said that they had never seen a team dominate offense and defensive line of scrimmage the way that Coconut Creek did. And I certainly saw that firsthand the week before against the Plantation team, that a lot of people really felt that could maybe do some things this year. So I would say if any team is the biggest surprise is Coconut Creek. They were supposed to be good, but I think that they're a level above what everybody believes they are. And I saw them plenty during the offseason, and every event that they went to, every single event, no matter if it was with St. Thomas or whether it was Miami Central, they won. So that gets you in an opportunity that they're a really good 7-on-7 team, but they also dominated line camps. And that kind of keeps you thinking a little bit for a team that nobody mentioned. And still, the people are scoffing at what I'm saying right now. People, oh, come on, they'll get, Chaminade will beat them by 50 points. No, they're not going to. It's just this team is a for real type of team that doesn't have this, like I said, doesn't have the skill kids that a lot of people have, but certainly they built that fortress on both sides.
Yeah, and they showed it right away. I mean, they clobbered Monarch in that first preseason game, and they've had quality win after quality win, beating Western, beating Plantation, and convincingly too in some cases.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, the running game too. I mean, they've got, Holtzclaw even misses a game. They don't miss a beat against Plantation, but that defense has been really impressive.
No doubt. And if you got to remember, they went up to Gainesville, Georgia, and played a team that's won 52 of 53 home games and have 2 state titles in a 6-year period, and only lost by 8 points. And, Rocky Gillis from the BCAA was at that game, and he told me that Coconut Creek had their chances at a packed house, at a, hostile environment. So you got to figure, that you have to take them a little bit serious, especially what they do up front. And if you can control the lines of scrimmage. But getting back to your original question, I think that Chaminade will win out. They have Dillard left, obviously, and then the playoffs. The only team that may have pushed them was Cardinal Newman, and they just lost Luke Warnock, their quarterback for the season. So that's a whole different ball game now. And then you figure, that somebody like a true North Academy has gotten better, and they beat a defending state champion by a lot this last weekend in Naples First Baptist. And they've done a great job. And as you said the other day, they'll narrow the difference between them and Chaminade, but they're not on that same level.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that big game this past week, I mean, Central, weird to look at their record and see 1-2, but we understand why. The 2 losses, nothing to be ashamed of. But how do you see? I mean, we watched that Norland team, and they, 5-0. They still have to play Booker T before they play Central, obviously, but that is one of the most, we talked about on the sideline, that is one of the biggest and most physical teams that they've ever had, even when they had, not just Duke Johnson, but even back before that, when they had the Antoine Barneses and Dwayne Bowes and guys like that. I mean, that game is really starting to look like the next big game of, game of the year type when they face each other on the 13th. How do you see the matchup now after 5 weeks?
Central's going to have their hands full. And, and I'm not going to say that American's anywhere near any of that competition, but they did what they were supposed to do with American. They put them away early, 35-point first quarter. They're big up front, as you said, on both sides of the ball. They run well. They pass well. Their secondary is really good. I'll tell you what, they're set up to run that gauntlet and do pretty well. I mean, we've watched Booker T. Washington a couple of times, and good team, but I think Norland wins that battle up front, and that's where. And I don't think that Booker T. has the horses to slow everybody down on Norland. And remember, Ennio Yapor is the wild card at quarterback. He controls things with his arm and his legs, and that gives Norland yet another weapon and gives Ice Harris yet something else to think about because they run the ball well, but at the same time they throw well. And if you have a quarterback that can lead like he does, I'm telling you, and their defense doesn't break. I mean, they're fast to the ball. You could even see in the Lakeland game. And Lakeland, remember, Lakeland's a team that has won 98% of their regular season games over the last 6 years. So they're not exactly a team that you could take lightly. And Norland went up there and put 48 points and 570 yards of offense on them. Who do they think they are? The Dolphins? Come on now. So, yeah.
720 something yards and 70 points. I mean, that looked like a high school game. That looked like a game we might see at Traz. But in all seriousness, though, we've seen a few teams that have impressed so far beyond the elites. Who are some of your first half surprises, you would say? I mean, I know we mentioned the other day that got to a state semifinal, even though they were outclassed when they faced Chaminade at the time. But that True North team, 5-0 so far, with some good road wins. It's still a couple tests to come. how many, let's start with them. Like how the strides that they've made, what have you seen where, you know, obviously they're still in 1M and Chaminade's still there potentially at the finish line, but this program continues to progress and get better.
No doubt. They've done a tremendous job. They have the kid, Zach Katz, is only in the 9th grade. He did some amazing things last year. They're big up front. They run the ball very well. They're well coached. Coach Greg LaFerre used to play at the University of Miami back in the day, has surrounded himself with some really, really good talent. I wrote something on them a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, they're stacked. They're stacked with young kids, you know, that, you know, school, what is it, 5 years old, the program, and you think to yourself, how could you, you know, get so popular so quick? And that has to do with a lot of these kids playing together at the youth football league level and wanting to move on and, you know, kind of stay together. I mean, you look at a roster like that, and they have not only a couple of seniors and some juniors, but they got 7th, 8th graders that are starting to make an impact. So, yeah, you know, I mean, you keep your eye. I think their big game coming up in 2 weeks is Stark Bradford County, who's really good. I mean, a lot of people don't know about them, but over the last 2 years, they have 11 shutouts in 2 years. Mm-hmm. And they play a pretty good brand of football. And so that's going to be their major test. And it's at home. So, I mean, certainly if they could pass that test at home, it's going to give them confidence going into the playoffs. As you mentioned, you know, Chaminade's usually a dead end in the state playoffs, but maybe they can punch back a little bit more than they did last year.
Yeah. Any other first half teams that maybe exceeded what you expected from them that you've seen in these last
South
2 weeks?
Broward. I think South Broward's a team, and we saw them for about a half a quarter the other day. They're big, they're athletic, running wise. They have the kid Humphreys going to the University of Miami. Randy Phillips came back to play quarterback. I mean, they're solid on defense. We watched them, you know, obviously in a game that's going to be continued, but what they showed in just a little bit of a quarter was pretty good. And up until this weekend, I thought I could put Edison in that category, and then they go and lose to Lakewood. They're a team that I thought had an opportunity, you know, to do some positive things. They beat Northwestern for the first time in a century. And you know, you think, wow. I mean, and they still have. It's that Booker T game on the 16th, the Monday before the GMAC week. And, you know, we were there for the first meeting, and until it rained, they were driving down there. I think they got inside the 20 when the lightning came, and yeah, impressive. I'll tell you another team, and they don't ever get any ink because obviously it's not considered a football program. Well, what about Ransom Everglades? I mean, this is a school that's 5-0. You know, I mean, they're well coached. I mean, Coach Karen has done a tremendous job with them. They've got an 8th grader who was voted as a top 5 nationally in Neiman Lawrence, who's a quarterback. And that's another team that really, I mean, obviously they don't have because they're independent, so they don't have a state playoffs per se, but that's definitely a program that I think is come up, and some of the other teams obviously that we expected, but watching them play, Christopher Columbus, you know, it's sort of like we have that saying is you could print up the tickets for state, because I don't see anybody not in South Florida that's going to beat them. Yeah. Well coached. They do everything right. They run the ball. They stop you from running the ball. We saw the Palmetto game, and the big difference in that Palmetto game was the very fact that they controlled the line of scrimmage, and that's huge. I think obviously they've done an outstanding job of what they did. Homestead's back to what they do. Obviously, you know, they have a little bit of a breather for a while, and then they go back in it. But I believe they play Columbus next week or the week after. Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, so that's a good one. I think they've done a pretty good job. Got to give Heritage all the credit in the world. You know, they lost so much. You lose a running back like Fletcher. You lose a wide receiver like Brandon Ennis and some of the other pieces that were on that team last year. And I thought they had a really good showing against Chaminade and never, you know, they never quit. and they stayed into that game. Obviously, they lost by 12, but I mean, I think Mike Smith, and you'll agree that he's done a great job. He's, you know, I mean, it was kind of been really a seamless transition between he and Pat Surtain because of the fact that here he takes a team last year to the state finals against Central and gave them everything they could handle. So, you have your Booker T. Washington, solid football team. It's still, a project or a team that's still building and is going to be over the next couple of years. I think they've done an outstanding job. Got to give Monarch credit too. They're not, they lost, a game, that was preseason, and then they lost a tough game to Atlantic by a point or two, and Atlantic showed what they were worth last week going into overtime with Cardinal Newman. Certainly, that's a team that is shown a lot in the first half. I think South Ridge, they kind of stumbled a little bit, but I think Coach Pierre Sinatus has them, on the way back. I think that's a really, really good program. So there have been some disappointments too, to me, a Western team who everybody figured, by the time they, all was said and done, maybe they'd lose to St. Thomas, but they've been a little bit surprised. Coconut Creek beat them. They still have a couple of big meetings coming up with Heritage. But on the overall, I think that when you look at Creek, you look at a team like South Ridge, those Hollywood, South Broward. So I think South Broward's got a chance to go undefeated in the regular season.
If they finish off Crop in this game this week, they should be in position to for sure. Yeah.
And you got to give Coach McRae a lot of credit because there's teams that as well as I do, there's a lot of cherry picking going on. And certainly in the off season, they lost a couple of really good kids. Jake Card from Norland, who would have been a great receiver and a compliment to what Humphrey does as a running back. But as you saw, and we both saw for at least a quarter, that's a sound football team.
Yeah. And even if, if Crop doesn't pull that one off, Tommy Caparel's another one that's gotten that team a lot better than it's been in recent years. A few others to mention before we sign off here. U School is undefeated. Archbishop McCarthy, which was in a program in really dire straits not that long ago, has done a good job. Coach Mangieri there. They're undefeated 4-0. And Westminster Academy, that's another independent team we kind of always forget. Yeah. They're 5-0, and I think they even play U School in a few weeks too.
Yeah, they do. That's going to be their big test.
It should be a good one.
Yeah, no, they've done a great job. And you mentioned those teams, and you're 100% right. Those are teams that were, under the radar. And because you never get the independent type of teams, never really get that shine. But, you look at teams like Ransom Everglades and programs like Westminster, as you brought up. Archbishop McCarthy, I mean, they struggled to field a varsity team last year. And they've already come up with a huge win over Fort Lauderdale, which was kind of an established type of team. They've done a really, really good job. Coach Pat Cooney came over from Monsignor Pace to kind of shore up both sides of the line of scrimmage. Well-coached team. Yeah, that's a big surprise for them. And I can't wait for the Westminster. I went to see U School already. I saw them earlier against Marathon. The kid Jet Urgulaitis, the quarterback, is really nice. The Dixon kid at running back is pretty good. So there's a lot of teams that we don't ever get a chance to talk about much, and I'm glad that we have that opportunity here.
Yeah. Well, Larry, we appreciate it as always. Thank you for the insights, my friend, and we'll see you on the sideline at some point very soon. I'm sure, as we move and continue to move through this high school season.
Thanks, Andre. I appreciate it.
All right. We thank Larry, as always, for being a guest on the show. Hopefully we'll get him on again down the road as we get a little further into the season. And now, before David and I give our picks for Week 6, we want to mention our Player of the Week polls are up as usual at MiamiHerald.com, saluting the best of the best. Some of the ones this week from Broward County include Cedric Bailey, who we mentioned before, 4 touchdown passes, 301 yards in that victory over Central. Ashley Fitzgerald, the cross-country phenom at American Heritage, continues to win, continues to dominate the competition. She won the Spanish River Invitational. two more football kids, Westminster Academy, who Larry and I mentioned 5-0 during our segment. Anthony Barbar, the quarterback, 19 of 28, 288 yards. He also threw 4 touchdown passes. They blew out Pinecrest 35-0. And Piper, who's having a decent year, Kayvon Stewart, recorded 2 sacks and had 5 tackles as the Bengals beat MacArthur. Piper with a good test on the road at Western this coming week. We'll see what they can do. And then in Dade County, Ennio Yapur, who you saw earlier, had a great performance against American. True North, well, another team we mentioned, is 5-0 and looking a little bit stronger than last year. They've actually conquered a few opponents upstate. They have a big one coming up with Bradford Stark in a couple of weeks to see if they continue to move up the ladder. Jonathan Bueno ran for 128 yards and 3 TDs as they beat Naples First Baptist, a pretty good team in that Class 1M. And outside of football, a couple of cross-country runners, David Serra and Daniela Hernandez, both triumphant at that Spanish River Invitational. And on the volleyball side, Doral had a big win over St. Brendan. That all-Dade player, Melissa Gonzalez, led the way there, 27 assists. She's the Firebirds setter. So vote for your favorite players. Vote for who you think is worthy of being called the player of the week. And now we're going to jump right into the picks. David, this one, I'm starting out. This is not a great week in terms of marquee matchups in Dade County, but one that's at least meaningful in terms of maybe deciding the district. That's St. Brendan and Miami Springs down at Curtis Park. We don't really talk about those two teams too much, but the Sabres last year won a district championship in that small district and were able to get to the postseason. If they beat Springs in this one, Springs is 4-1. It looks like they'll be headed the same route. Steve Smith and those guys have done a pretty good job. I think the Sabres get it done, make it back-to-back district titles.
Yeah, I agree with you. They're a program that has been like pretty steadily on the rise over the last couple of years. First in the Independent League, as we talked about on this show a couple of weeks ago, the way that teams can build through that league. Now they seem like, they're not a state title contender or anything yet, but they're clearly trending in the right direction. And, they're a program that I think has some real potential when you look at the facilities they have there. And the way that they've just, like I said, steadily progressed over the last, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. Now switching gears, speaking of that game that we talked about earlier, Chaminade and Coconut Creek. I mean, I can't, as well as Creek's playing, this is another level of opponent. I do think Creek won't get embarrassed. I think they'll hang in there. They'll probably make some plays. Their defense has been one of the backbones of why this team has gotten off to such a good start. So I could see them making some plays, maybe making it interesting for a quarter or so. But the Lions, with their depth, I mean, they showed it again last week, the way they can pretty much beat you every which way. I think they come out on top, but this is another character builder for Creek as they go forward.
Yeah, Creek's defense is really good. They've kind of, I think, impressed in every single game they've played this year, right? Even going back to the preseason. What would be impressive against Chaminade? Like, no one obviously is expecting them to win. I'm sure that's going to be the message they have coming out of it. But what would be impressive for them is like you said, like anytime you can slow down that offense even a little bit, that's a major feat. And I think they can string together a couple of stops here and there and hopefully keep it interesting. But yeah, we're both picking Chaminade here.
Yeah. And on the other side of Broward County, we've got St. Thomas at home. They seem to always be at home this year. It looks like 8, 9 straight home games. Here's another one as they face a Miramar team, which surprisingly to some dropped one against Dillard. Did not look good at all in the offensive end. A lot of mistakes, a lot of turnovers. Ended up losing Saturday night 14-7 at Dillard. Don't think this is the week the Patriots bounce back. I mean, their defense, similar to Creek, is always kind of the backbone of that team. But if this offense is that mistake prone, Aquinas is going to feast on that. I think the Raiders get another one here.
Yeah, I like the Miramar defense too. I think if this game happened maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would like Miramar's chances a little bit better. But as we talked about, and as Joe Frisaro talked about in the interview we showed, that St. Thomas seems to be kind of figuring itself out. That, last year, Treasure Coast was actually one of their toughest games they played. I think they won 21-14 up there. This year they blow them out. And considering the way that things were looking for them 2-3 weeks ago when they were, probably should have lost to Cocoa, right? Like it seems like they've started to figure out their identity a little bit. And I think it's kind of a rivalry game too. They're not going to take it easy on Miramar.
Yeah. I wonder how much in a weird way that was kind of like the kick in the pants that St. Thomas needed, too, to get questioned like that down at the end after everything that happened. And then now the big one this week, we've got the two teams that always seem to not only settle a district, but usually settle who ends up going, at least going to state. Last year, that team didn't win a state title thanks to Central, but over the past few years, it's a team that whoever ends up winning ultimately probably wins a state championship, and that's Gibbons at American Heritage, 7:30 on Friday. The narrative was this Heritage team was maybe a little too young this year, but they've really proven themselves, even though 2-1, even against Chaminade. The common opponent in this one, Chaminade kind of destroyed Gibbons when they played them. Heritage hung tough and had a chance, even though, some people say Chaminade maybe didn't play at their best, but Heritage made a lot of plays in that game. I think they've shown that they're already talented despite maybe a little bit of youth. At this point, they're starting to look more like veterans out. They've gotten through some of these battles. And at the very least right now, Heritage looks like a little bit better than Gibbons.
Yeah, I like Heritage in this one too. I would not be surprised either way, obviously, in a game like this. I think clearly the game of the week. Heritage, you talk about the youth. There are still, probably too many drops, right, from the receivers. Their two best receivers are both sophomores. There are probably, quarterback Diabel, also a sophomore, probably a few, too many, takes a sack or misses a throw or something. But I think the running game is really good for them. The Thunder and Lightning combo they have with Byron Lewis and DeAndre Desenor. And they've still got that explosivity with Diabel, who can make big plays, and all those young receivers they have. So I think they're a little bit more like battle tested and proven in those battles right now, which is why I like them here. But
yeah, you want to say that part again?
I think they're a little more battle tested than Gibbons right now, and have proven a little bit more in those battles, but they'll probably meet twice.
Yeah. I mean, if Gibbons is going to pull this off, they're like Michael Merdinger and that offense can't turn the ball over for starters. And then their defense has to force a few turnovers with like Christopher Williams, Casey Etienne, those guys.
Yeah, that's the way
it's the only way.
Win, because it's a young team, right? You get a couple of drops or an errant throw or something like that, and all of a sudden you can flip field position and get points that way. So, but like I said, I think these teams are going to play twice this year probably. So it'll be a little bit of a feel-out game. Like they're going to be playing, obviously. Like both teams are trying to win. You get the playoff game in the playoffs if you win, and you never know. But it's going to be like a little bit of a feel-out game, I think, because I think both of them expect that they'll see each other again in November.
And we heard so much about this O-line at Gibbons being so deep this year. Like this is the type of game where they'd have to dominate if they're going to end up pulling it off. So. But we'll be back next week to recap that Gibbons Heritage battle and plenty more, and look ahead to, by then we'll be looking into October already, as some of these, I can't believe we're already halfway through the season and the games are going to get more and more meaningful, but we'll be there documenting it for you. For David Wilson, I'm Andre Fernandez. Thanks for joining us as usual on Titletown South Florida.